Middlesbrough will be rubbing their hands together with a bidding war set to break out over Hayden Hackney. Now, the Middlesbrough midfielder, of course, is going to be attracting a lot of attention this summer. It was absolutely inevitable after last season. He was the Championship's Player of the Year. He was Middlesbrough's standout star, and with Middlesbrough failing to get promoted to the Premier League, it was almost certain, really, that he was going to move on this summer. Now, of course, he is still a Middlesbrough player at the moment. A deal hasn't been agreed yet, but it is widely accepted that Hayden Hackney is going to be moving on this summer. Now, a number of Premier League clubs are interested in him. That number seems to be growing by the day, quite frankly. Plenty of clubs in the top flight, outside of the top six, all entering the race to sign him. And it really is an ideal situation for Middlesbrough, who are hoping that these clubs will be entering into some sort of bidding war to drive up the price to sign Hayden Hackney. Now, this started last week with Everton formalising their interest. Reports were heavily suggesting that they were hoping to tie up a deal for Hayden Hackney for worth around about £10 million. Reports from the Middlesbrough end came out quite quickly and said that that would absolutely not be the case. Middlesbrough were hoping to sell him for around about £20 million, and if the asking price wasn't met, Middlesbrough would be willing to keep hold of Hayden Hackney for the next year. Of course, his contract expires next summer, so that does add a little bit of urgency to Middlesbrough's situation. Of course, they have said that they'd be happy for him to stay, but I think realistically, from a financial point of view, the club would ideally be wanting to move him on this summer. And of course, Hayden Hackney does want to move on to another club in the Premier League. But it's not only Everton that are in the race for this deal. Now, according to the Northern Echo, Everton have had two bids knocked back by Middlesbrough. They've tried twice to try and sign the player, but of course Middlesbrough have rejected them. Middlesbrough in no rush to get a deal done. And Crystal Palace now are also entering the race, and they're considering making an offer for around about £20 million to try and get a deal for Hayden Hackney done. Now, that's much closer to what Middlesbrough are looking to do. Middlesbrough ideally are looking for around about £25 million to sell Hayden Hackney, but you'd imagine that if an offer came in for around about 20 million plus add-ons maybe, then Middlesbrough could be very, very tempted to cash in. Those add-ons could prove to be a really, really important part of such a deal, because Middlesbrough has an excellent track record of carrying out such deals over the last couple of seasons. You look at people like Morgan Whittaker, who's gone to Aston Villa. He's now being reportedly linked with a £100 million move to Arsenal, which could benefit Middlesbrough hugely. A 20% sell-on clause there means that Middlesbrough could pocket £20 million if that deal comes off. Jed Spencer's another player that Middlesbrough benefited from massively. Marcus Tavernier, if he was to leave Bournemouth, that's another one where Middlesbrough would really benefit financially. Rav Vandenberg as well as another one to keep an eye on from that point of view. So this is something that is clearly written into Middlesbrough's business model, and with Hayden Hackney, if he is to leave Middlesbrough this summer, then a sell-on clause is going to be a massive part of that, because ultimately Middlesbrough are banking on the fact that Hayden Hackney's development won't stop with this move. They are hoping that Hayden Hackney is a player who can continue to develop, maybe move to a club in the Premier League who are a sort of ambitious bottom half team, maybe a sort of mid-table side, and then if he can do that, they can maybe kick on. See him move on to one of the Premier League's top six sides, one of the bigger guns in the Premier League, where he may well move on for a much bigger money, where Middlesbrough could get a second bite of the cherry, so to speak, and get an even bigger fee. Of course, we've seen it with other clubs in the Premier League doing it with the likes of Alex Scott at Bournemouth, with Wharton at Crystal Palace, these sorts of midfielders who are probably one step ahead of Hayden Hackney in that development, in that sort of pecking order. They're players who are on the radar of the Premier League's top clubs, and so Hayden Hackney, Middlesbrough hope, will be one of those next players to do so. So there are a number of clubs interested in Hayden Hackney. We've spoken about them in previous videos. Everton are very much the front runners still. At this point, he is the club that Hayden Hackney. Everton are the club that Hayden Hackney has said that he wants to join. They're his preferred choice as it stands at the moment. But of course, Crystal Palace will be looking to strengthen in midfield this summer. Now, they're going through a summer of flux as it is. Oliver Glasner is already leaving the club. They're going to have a new boss coming in. We mentioned about Wharton as well. He's someone who's been heavily linked with a move away. Someone like Manchester United being very much linked with him. So they could be looking for a central midfielder. And of course, they have lost a couple of big players over the last 12 months as well, with Eberechi Eze going to Arsenal and Mark Gahey going to Man City. Obviously, Michael Olise as well going to Bayern Munich a little while ago as well. So they've lost a few big players, and so they're kind of wanting to rebuild as well. And so it'll be really interesting to see whether they do come in for Hayden Hackney with that £20 million offer. As I said, I think £20 million would be probably there or thereabouts in terms of what Middlesbrough are looking for. £20 million as a fee plus add-ons would, I imagine, would just about get the deal done. I think particularly if other clubs are interested, it is probably good news for us in terms of the way that that's driven up the price, because even just last week I was suggesting that maybe a deal that was worth 15 to 20 million might be enough to get a deal done. But of course, when you do have this many clubs interested, when they are trying to outdo each other, it does mean that the price incrementally goes up, and that could be really, really good news for Middlesbrough as we look to see what happens with Hayden Hackney. Now, as far as Middlesbrough are concerned, there's no real rush to get a deal done. Of course, we just want to make sure that we do get the right deal. We want to make sure that we attract the right fee for a player who is so important for Middlesbrough. But there is the other side of that, where Middlesbrough will want to get this done and dusted to some extent, because we will want to get in the money for Hayden Hackney. Middlesbrough, of course, are preparing for a big summer themselves after missing out on promotion via the playoffs after losing to Hull City. There is a bit of a rebuild needed at the Riverside Stadium. Kim Hellberg wanting to bring in some players of his own and some signings of his own to build the team in his image. And so I think with Hayden Hackney all but certain to be moving on, it does mean that we do need that money through the door. We need it to settle in the bank account so that we can then kick on and start to rebuild, really start to know how much money we've got to spend on different positions, because of course we are going to be looking for attacking players. That's going to be a real focus for us. I think we need a striker, maybe even two. We're probably going to be looking for wingers, pacey players, because pace is something that we're really, really lacking at the moment. Of course, central midfield is something where we're going to have to replace Hayden Hackney if he moves on, as it stands at the moment. Of course, we lost Alan Brown as well, who's returned to Sunderland, and there have been reports that we might be interested in bringing him back, so that's something to watch. But then as well as that, you're also looking at left back, which is the position that we need to strengthen, with Matt Targett leaving and Alex Bangura a bit uncertain over his fitness. And then, of course, there's the whole goalkeeping debate as well, as to whether Middlesbrough look to upgrade on Sol Brynn in order to go one step further this season. So Middlesbrough not in any rush to sell Hayden Hackney this summer. We can afford to be patient. We can afford to take our time and make sure that we do get the best deal possible. But ultimately, Middlesbrough will be thankful when that money lands in the bank account, and it means that we can then kick on. We're not relying on sales at that point. We're then in a position where we can use that money, really go out there and start to build the team, because ultimately the earlier that we can get our transfers done, the better equipped that we're going to be to hit the ground running when the season starts in August. So Hayden Hackney, of course, is probably going to be the first domino in Middlesbrough's summer knock-on effect, I guess. So I want to know what you think. What bid would it take for Middlesbrough to accept an offer for Hayden Hackney? Drop into the comments below. Let me know what you think. And then if you would like to see a sale done, where do you think that Hayden Hackney would fit in best? Drop into the comments. Let me know what you think. And if you have enjoyed this video, please do hit like. Please do hit subscribe as well. And I will catch up with you next time.